allegiance. Please remain standing for the invocation from Pastor John Arnold. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us pray. Dear God, we thank you for this gathering. You have willed us and called us to pray for those in leadership. So we pray now, Lord, for council, for mayor, for all the proceedings that will take place tonight. May your Spirit guide us. May we do things to glorify you. Bless our fine township. Bless, Lord, our mayor, council. Bless our chief and all the men and women who patrol this great city, this great township. We pray your blessings upon us tonight, and we ask this in Christ's name. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor Arnold.
Thank you.
This regular meeting of the Township Council is being held in accordance with the scheduled meetings of the Township Council established and adopted by the Township Council, which schedule designated time, date, and place of this meeting. Adequate public notice of this meeting has been provided pursuant to the provisions of the Open Public Meetings Act. We are using an electronic amplifying recording device in order to obtain audible and clear record. We request all those who wish to speak be recognized to state your name and address directly into the microphone. This recording device to be solely utilized by the Township Clerk's Office shall be the official record of the Township Council meeting. Roll call, please.
Mr. Hutchison.
Present.
Mr. Schmidt.
Present.
Mr. Seiler.
Here.
Mrs. Strada. Here. Mrs. Winters. Here. Mr. Mercado.
Present.
Mr. Bianchini.
Present.
Mr. Lechner.
Here.
Mr. Chief Earl.
Here.
Mr. Carlemere.
Here.
Mr. Cantwell.
Here.
Mr. Harris.
Here.
We'll have the first public portion. Anyone wishing to speak on any agenda items only, please raise your hand, come to the microphone. Yes, Mr. Kay.
Evening, Council. Robert Kolakowski, Lincoln Drive, Glen Oaks. Comments on two items on the agenda. The first one regards the speed limits that the township is enacting. I do agree with them. I think there are more roads that need to be lowered, such as where there are 50 mile per hours, which were once rural and now are more residential. The only comment I would like to make was with Summerdale Road, when the speed limit was dropped there. I think it was done on a Thursday. I think I went by both Thursday and Friday, and they had the billboard sign up alerting the motorists of the speed change, but then it was gone, I think, on Saturday. And I think you need at least 4 days, including a weekend, for people really to realize that there has been a change. I just think it's 2 days I don't think is really enough. I think you need a minimum of 4 days, with 2 of them at least being a weekend, to give people fair notice that has happened. Next item is the ordinance, the resolutions regarding the municipal court substance abuse advocate. First of all, I'd like to commend Councilman Hutchinson for pushing at the workshop meeting to have them made resolutions to continue on a monthly basis until a new contract is signed. I think that was the right call in terms of procedural wise to make it all up and up. So I'd like to thank you for that. Secondly, now that the program has been in operation for about 6 months, 7 months, exactly how does it work? Is there somebody that could answer that?
Chief, would you give them a synopsis of that?
I mean, it works really well. So the advocate is actually in the municipal courtroom and speaks for the people that are there, maybe for a drug possession offense or other offenses. Let's say that may have an issue with drugs, sometimes theft, shoplifting, that type of thing. Engages them in conversation, and then encourages them and provides information about certain treatment programs, and then guides them through a process of follow-up, a lot of times phone calls and persistence, and helping them achieve and get into treatment. So it's not actually mandated by the judge, possibly encouraged by the judge, I can say, but the judge actually can't mandate it at this point. That may be something that happens in the future, but there needs to be some legislative changes to make that happen.
Does the advocate recommend multiple programs, or how many do they?
They use a whole number of providers.
Mhm.
So part of the condition was that they have experience with the drug court, because there is a drug court and superior court in Kansas. So those people need to be familiar with that process, and I'm going to say, roughly off the top of my head, maybe 10 or 11 of those certain providers that do that kind of work, and they're the providers that work.
Okay. Now, I think I read in a press release 11 persons have taken advantage of that. Is that correct?
And that's a little, I think about 42 the advocate is met with in the courtroom. I think the number was 11 went into residential treatment.
Mm-hmm.
About 41 actually participated in the assessment,
Okay.
where they've actually sat and gone through the process or engaged with the advocate. And then others have gone into other types of treatment beyond residential. So the 11 was kind of like singled out because that's pretty significant.
Mm-hmm.
They actually went to residential treatment. Not all completed, but a good number have, and I believe some are still in that process. So
Right.
even though it's been 6 or 7 months, I mean, really, it could take several years for us. You know, it's nice to say that some haven't been rearrested, which of course, you know, we're pleased about that. About 85%, I think, have not. But, you know, it is still only 6 or 7
Right.
months. You know, a year from now, that number could be lower or higher or change a lot. So.
Do you know which programs they were referred to or entered into the particular?
I don't. I may have that information. I just don't know off the top of my head. There's been a host of other providers. I couldn't say for sure.
Okay. Again, I would like to again state my support for the program. I think anything that we can do is good. And with that, as I thought last year when this was first brought up, I really do think the position should be a part-time position within the police department or somewhere in municipal government, with a person who is not directly affiliated with any outside counseling services. Even at the last workshop meeting, it was brought up that an individual would, the information was sent to the individual. It's a corporation that we contracted out with. And I feel it's a conflict of interest to have an entity recommend services when they themselves provide those services. It gives them the opportunity to cherry pick the best clients based on insurance, etc. So again, I support the effort itself, and I would like to see it made a part-time position in either the police department or somewhere in the municipal government. Thank you.
Well, Robert, we do have an individual that is part of the that has been hired, and Chief, you know, Michelle, who I know I've worked with numerous residents who've been dealing with this, and she has been a godsend to a lot of them. So we do have that through the family portion of what the police department does. I think this one, and I don't know if they are recommending anybody or cherry picking or any of that. I don't know if that's, you know, if they had those services other than more of a social service type scenario. But your point's well taken. But we do have someone who has been very helpful for our residents and been providing them with a lot of information. So we sort of have that a little bit right now. So I think as this grows, Robert will be able to see the effects of it and then maybe be able to make other decisions. I think this is just the beginning of it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, Pete.
Good evening, Pete Heinbaugh, Morningstar Court. I have a couple topics I want to ask questions about, but just before I get onto any agenda items, I just want to mention something about an OPA request I sent in. Turned out to be a very lengthy.
Pete, I don't mean to interrupt you, but we're only taking agenda items.
Okay.
Yeah, if you want anything.
Okay. Related to the Drug Advocate Program, Bob said most of what said better than I can say most of how I feel about it. Also, I did want to say though, on Wednesday I attended the Drug Prevention Overdose Symposium, and Chief Earl was a speaker at that symposium. It was a full lecture hall, mostly Rutgers Law students, I believe, and the Chief did an excellent job. Presented our SAVE program. Everyone was impressed with hearing about our SAVE program, and just wanted to mention that it went over well, and let's keep going with this program. It sounds really good.
Thank you, Pete.
And the Chief looked real spiffy in his coat and tie. He looks imposing in the uniform, but he looks spiffy in his suit and tie. So.
Never heard the Chief relate a spiffy, but we'll
Spiffy. Good one. Related to the speed limit, aerial road speed limit. I'm not speaking for myself. I'm speaking on behalf of a resident who couldn't make it. Mrs. O'Donnell said she sent an email to all members of the council. Did everyone get that email and considered it? Any comments on her?
I have not read my email today. I haven't gotten to it, but I'm sure to read it.
Okay.
I got the email and I did respond to her, and I did on behalf of Michelle and I, because we both knew that we had gotten it, and I did forward it to the chief, and we already had a conversation about it.
Thank you.
And I did email her back to that.
Okay, good. Thank you. I'm bringing it up now. Mrs. O'Donnell would have sent it as an eGov question, but just wanted to be part of the discussion before the vote took place. So she sent emails and just asked that I follow up. Third topic is this regarding the 2015 budget. This resolution for the 3.5% cap bank or whatever. Could you explain that a little more plainer English?
Yeah, we discuss this each year. And again, it's my recommendation. Most municipalities approve the COLA ordinance, and what it addresses the expenditure side of the budget. And by passing the COLA ordinance, it allows you to bank cap. Say, for example, if we had a bad winter where we had snow that exceeded the cap that's established by the state, allows you to go up to the 3.5%.
So this is, at this point, this is just procedural. It's not an indication of what the 2015 budget will be or the tax rates will be.
That's set by the levy cap, 2% levy cap.
With exceptions that allow you to go over the 2%, as occurred last year. Yeah.
As established by the state.
Right. Any forecast of what we're looking at for tax increase,
No.
budget-wise, 2015?
No, not
Nothing at this time. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Pete. Anyone else? Ray?
Good evening, Council. Ray Paldor, Ariel. Just a question on the reduction speed limit on Ariel Road. What is the actual justification for that request?
Chief?
Well, the request started from a resident who had concerns with the traffic signal at Wood Lane and Ariel Road, which we sent then for a request to the engineer and asked for a report, and they determined the speed limit should be lowered after the study.
Did they find any accidents, near accident situations, besides the request of one person that would warrant this?
Well, we had 9 at that intersection in a 3-year period.
9 of which?
9 crashes.
9 crashes. Okay. My second question is on, and I know that you'll have a public portion in the second reading of the signs after the discussion that we had last time. If not politics on the signs, other considerations that might be to think about before, and let me clarify something. I think you referred to this as not much of a change from the existing ordinance, is that correct?
That's what the solicitor described it as, yes.
Okay, if not any changes from that, why is this being introduced in lieu of just retaining what we already have in place?
It was drafted more as a housekeeping to clear up some of the language in the ordinance, and Mr. Lechner, our planner, is here, but as I've reviewed it, that's what the gist I got from it. I think any further comments on that should be issue that dealt with the campaign signs was not being changed. There was some language cleanup of the ordinance, so it was more of a housekeeping cleanup of that ordinance.
Okay, because some of the things to be considered with this, let's say that Mr. Branchini, you have a contractor come to your house, puts an addition on your house. The spectacular work to which he's proud of and you're also proud of. Towards the end of the contract, in the building process, both of you are so proud of that addition, he offers you a financial incentive at the end of that job, let's say $750, and he asks you to keep his sign, not on his lawn, but out the curbside, where other folks that are coming by admiring that addition, 6 months. That would therefore be in violation of this ordinance. But that's a business practice that could be damaged by this ordinance, whereas a contractor, I mean, he's not going to rent a billboard and not going to be able to advertise on television or newspaper your particular addition that your neighbors and friends and people coming through the development would see. And I think that would be a problem for, I mean, if we want to be a business-friendly environment for contractors, lawn care, tree removal, whatever, that work can and should not be prohibited by a sign ordinance, because it would otherwise be very unfriendly to business, in my opinion.
Well, I think, Ray, I think there has to be a balance in how many signs and how long signs and how big signs. So the sign ordinance is a guide to help not overburden the town with excessive signs. So, you know, I think it's something that is necessary, whether it inhibits business. I mean, the little construction guy, you know, he depends on that lawn sign when he's up there building or doing the renovation. I have never seen personally anybody leaving it up there for a long period of time outside of when they're there. Roofing companies, you see that, siding companies. But I think we have to have some common sense with it, and I think that's what we're trying to do.
Okay, you mentioned something about limited to number of signs.
I would like to interrupt for a second with all due respect. Now, there will be a scheduled public hearing. There will be an appearance before the planning board, which hasn't taken place as yet. But to get into a back and forth exchange, I think you're in a sense tainting the public hearing process or interfering with the public hearing process, trying to get some kind of consensus on it. Well, I think your comments are more appropriate for the second public hearing rather than this time.
I would disagree with that, because before you vote on it, and we have an on the question period of time, which is very limited, the rest of the council people who are going to vote on this tonight can hear this before the second reading and the discussion back and forth.
Of the second reading.
Understood. This allows them a little bit more time, and not only that, by discussing it now, someone else may have some things input. The other question on that was
a previous speaker not to address an ordinance up for public hearing.
Well, this is on agenda items, so I thought I would take that liberty.
Items just on resolutions where the public normally, under municipal law in New Jersey, towns do not allow that, but this government allows a public portion on resolution agenda items because there is not an open to the public before council members vote on it. That's why that is allowed.
Well, I'll finish up in saying one of the other things that I had noticed, and whether it is public, not public, or part of government, a sign that's on Area Road right now looks like a standard Department of Transportation sign with the sturdy metal and metal sign advertising applications for school bus drivers. Now, would something like that be in violation? Because that looks like a sign that's intended to be there for quite a while. It's dug into the dirt real well. Is that also something that, with all the new additions and house cleaning on that, would that not be in violation?
I'm not prepared to answer that question.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing no other hands, we will close the first public portion. Proclamation.
Whereas females between the ages 16 to 25 are vulnerable to intimate partner violence, experience abuse at a rate almost triple the national average, and whereas 1 in 3 adolescent girls in the United States was a victim of physical, emotional, or verbal abuse from the dating partner, a figure that far exceeds victimization rates for other types of violence affecting youth. And whereas high school students who experience physical violence in a dating relationship are more likely to use drugs and alcohol, are at a greater risk of suicide, and are much more likely to carry patterns of abuse into future relationships. And whereas young people victimized by a dating partner are more likely to engage in risky sexual behavior and unhealthy dieting behaviors than they experience may disrupt normal development of self-esteem and body image. And whereas nearly half of teens who experience dating violence report that incidents of abuse took place in a school building or on school grounds. And whereas only 33% of teens who are in an abusive relationship ever tell anyone about the abuse, 81% of parents surveyed either believe teen dating violence is not an issue or that they do not know if it is one. And whereas by providing young people with education about healthy relationships and relationship skills, and by changing attitudes that support violence, we recognize that dating violence can be prevented, and where it is essential to raise community awareness and to provide training for teachers, counselors, and school staff so that they may recognize when youth are exhibiting signs of dating violence. And whereas the establishment of Teen Dating Violence Awareness and Prevention Month will benefit young people, their families, school, and communities regardless of socioeconomic status, gender, sexual orientation, or ethnicity. And whereas everyone has the right to a safe and healthy relationship and to be free from abuse. And now therefore I, David Mayer, Mayor of the Township of Gloucester, and Glenby and Keeney Council President, do hereby proclaim February 2014 Teen Dating Violence Awareness and Prevention Month throughout Gloucester Township. We urge Gloucester Township residents to report any teen dating violence by empowering young people to develop healthier relationships, assisting victims in assessing the information and supportive services they need, creating better and more resources for young people in need, instituting effective intervention and prevention policies in schools, engaging in discussions with family members and peers to promote awareness and prevention of the twit epidemic of teen dating violence. Proclamation. For generations, the story of American progress has been shaped by the inextinguishable beliefs that change is always possible and a brighter future lies ahead. With tremendous strength and abiding resolve, our ancestors, some of whom were brought to this land in chains, have woven their resilient dignity into the fabric of our nation and taught us that we are not trapped by the mistakes of history. It was these truths that found expression as foot soldiers and freedom riders sat in, stood up, marched, and agitated for justice and equality. This audacious movement gave birth to a new era of civil and voting rights, and slowly we renewed our commitment to an ideal at the heart of our founding. No matter who you are, what you look like, how modest your beginnings, or the circumstances of your birth, you deserve every opportunity to achieve your God-given potential. As we mark National African American History Month, we celebrate giants of the civil rights movement and countless other men and women whose names are etched in the hearts of their loved ones and the cornerstones of the country they helped to change. We pause to reflect on our progress in our history, not only to remember, but also to acknowledge our unfinished work. We reject the false notion that our challenges lie only in the past, and we recommit to advancing what has been left undone. Brave Americans did not struggle and sacrifice to secure fundamental rights for themselves and others, only to see those rights denied to their children and grandchildren. Our nation is still racked with division and poverty. Too many children live in crumbling neighborhoods, cycling through substandard schools and being affected by daily violence in their communities. And Americans of all races have seen their wages and income stagnate while inequality continues to pull back hardworking families and entire communities. But the trajectory of our history gives us hope. Today we stand on the shoulders of courageous individuals who endured the thumps of billy clubs, the blast of fire hose, and the pain of watching dreams be deferred and denied. We honor them by investing in those around us and doing all we can to ensure every American can reach their full potential. Our country is at its best when everyone is treated fairly and has the chance to build the future they seek for themselves and their family. This means providing the opportunity for every person in America to access a world-class education, safe and affordable housing, and the job training that will prepare them for the careers of tomorrow. Like the countless quiet heroes who worked and led far from the public eye, we know that with enough effort, empathy, and perseverance, people who love their country can change it. Together we can help our nation live up to its immense promise. This month, let us continue the unending journey toward a more just, more equal, and more perfect union. Now therefore I, David Mayer, and I, Glenby and Keeney, President of the Gloucester Township
accept the minutes?
The regular meeting, January 26th, special meeting, February 2nd, February workshop, executive session, February 2nd.
Motion to approve the minutes? On the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Mr. Seiler?
Yes.
Mrs. Strato?
Yes.
Mrs. Winters? Yes. Mr. Mercado?
I'm staying on the 26th out of that.
Mr. Bianchini?
Yes. Proposal?
Crestmont Avenue and Grant Drive in Court, 2015 Road Program Improvement Program.
Motion to accept the proposal?
So moved. Second.
On the question? Roll call? Go.
Well,
Sorry.
you're moving to accept it,
Right.
and I think you will address it as a small program.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Mr. Seiler?
Yes.
Mrs. Strato?
Yes.
Mrs. Winters? Yes. Mr. Mercado?
Yes.
Mr. Bianchini?
Yes. Can we have a straw vote?
The purpose of this for the public is Remington and Burlington is the township engineer. This is a proposal to do road improvement program for 2015, and the procurement statutes allow, once an engineer is appointed to general work for the community, that it does not require a significant or separate resolution. It can be done just by what they call straw vote or approval of the governing body.
Is there any questions from council for our engineer? Seeing none, can we have a straw vote?
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Mr. Seiler?
Yes.
Mrs. Strato?
Yes.
Mrs. Winters? Yes. Mr. Mercado?
Yes.
Mr. Bianchini?
Yes.
Again, just for clarification, there will be a job number assigned, am I correct?
That's correct.
Ordinance of second reading and public hearing. This ordinance has not been heard by the planning board, so therefore council cannot act on it. And I would ask that we have a motion to table this.
That's correct. You cannot move forward with it as a land use regulation until it goes through the planning board for review with another hearing at that level. If it comes back with their recommendation or a modification, you'll then address your public hearing at that.
Table.
Second.
On the question, roll call, please.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Mr. Seiler?
Yes.
Mrs. Strato?
Yes.
Mrs. Winters? Mr. Mercado?
Yes.
Mr. Bianchini?
Yes. Now, also, we were given a letter from Emily Gibbons from the Maley and Associates office, so I would ask that the clerk please send this up to the planning board as part of the ordinance review. Thank you. Next ordinances of ordinances of first reading. Ordinance O-15-04. Ordinance amending Chapter 81, Section 31 entitled Speed Limits of the Code of the Township of Gloucester to establish speed limit reduction along Hero Road, the Township of Gloucester, County of Camden, State of New Jersey. As this ordinance states, this is to establish a reduction in speed limit from 45 miles an hour to 35 miles an hour from Blackwood Clementon Road to Little Gloucester Road. Motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
On the question?
No question.
Yes.
Chief, did you get a chance to see this letter from HACOM?
Yeah,
She
right.
had asked that speed limit be extended all the way to Cross Keys Road. What is your opinion on that?
I did. I'd have to do some more research, and Lieutenant McKendry left town today, so I wanted to speak to him. I mean, even if we wanted to move forward, I think we would need Remington and Vernick's study if we want to go that far. But I wanted to check some histories, and I know I've heard, obviously she's come to some council meetings in the past and talked about some speed issues with some construction that went on. But I wanted to look back and see some of the past history on the highway and some counts that we have to see what the speed it actually is first. And then I'm sure maybe I'll follow up with Mr. Cardis if that's okay as we move forward. But I just wanted to do a little more homework on that portion of the road.
Right.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay.
else? Roll call.
Mr. Hutchison?
Before I vote, I want to say that I think it's great that we're doing something with the speed limits. My boys, I have 3 boys who run. Last night my son ran 13 miles on the roadways in this town. And every time he goes out, my heart skips a beat. That being said, I agree with Bob. I pulled out of Balance Street the other day, and I was driving on Summerdale Road, and I forgot. It's just so, it's still too new. So if at all possible, it would be wonderful if we could, keep educating the residents. So I vote yes.
Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Mr. Seiler?
Yes.
Mrs. Strato?
Yes.
Mrs. Winters? Mr. Mercado?
Yes.
Mr. Bean?
Yes. Next ordinance is ordinance O-15-05. Ordinance to exceed the municipal budget appropriation limits and establish a cap bank. As the title states, this ordinance will allow the township for calendar year 2015 to exceed the municipal budget appropriation limits and to establish a cap bank. Anything to add to that, Tom?
No.
We have a motion to approve.
So moved.
On the question, roll call, please.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Mr. Seiler?
Yes.
Mrs. Strato?
Yes.
Mrs. Winters? Mr. Mercado?
Yes.
Mr. Bean?
Yes. I now have resolutions of consent agenda. Any council person wishing to remove any of them, please let me know now.
Mr. President, I'll make a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented. Second.
On the question, roll call, please.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Mr. Seiler?
Yes.
Mrs. Strato?
Yes.
Mrs. Winters? Mr. Mercado?
Yes.
Mr. Bean?
Yes.
Resolution 69, resolution appointing members to the Gloucester Township Historic and Scenic Preservation Committee.
This resolution will appoint Dorothy Morley to a five-year service for the appointment to the members of the Gloucester Township Historic and Scenic Preservation Committee. Motion to adopt.
Second.
On the question, roll call, please.
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Mr. Seiler?
Yes.
Mrs. Strato?
Yes.
Mrs. Winters? Mr. Mercado?
Yes.
Dean King.
Yes. We do not have any GT eGov access questions, so we'll go to the second public portion. And wishing to speak on any subject, please raise your hand, come to the microphone. Pete?
Behind All Morningstar Court, Sicklerville. What I was starting to say, I sent an Oprah request in a couple weeks ago to the clerk's office, and it turned out to be reams and reams of pages. And that's not my intent when I send in an Oprah request. I just want to get information, and you never know how broad or narrow sometimes they make the request. So what I was thinking in the future, if I send in a request that I know there should be narrow or broad, I'll put a expected page quantity on it, like 100 pages or whatever. And if it exceeds that, I could ask the clerk's office to call me, and then we could work on how I could reword it or narrow it or something like that. I don't want to overburden. My objective isn't to overburden anyone or collect pages and pages of information I don't even really want in the first place. So if I would with each Oprah request, put a max page number, and if filling that request looks like it's going to exceed that, the clerk's office could give me a call, and we could maybe go forward with it anyway, but maybe I could reword the Oprah and just put less of a burden on the clerk's office.
Yeah, I guess I don't believe the Open Public Records Act addresses that, but it does leave the ability of the person making the request in the clerk's office to communicate, modify and adjust, and further limit and refine the Oprah request. So I think it's
Okay.
great.
Yeah. This latest request is probably going to end up 80-90% of the pages I get back aren't even what I intended to request.
I would be willing to speak with Mr. Heimbold too regarding that associated with a particular athletic organization. And by doing that, I think I can help him to narrow down what he specifically is requesting. And there were quite a few emails, obviously, because of the work that has gone on.
Okay, so I didn't mean for that to happen, so
No.
we'll work on it.
And then the fact that every email is to 3 different people,
Right.
so I get everybody.
Okay,
So it just kept on getting bigger.
okay.
Thank you, Pete.
Mhm. My next topic is the GTMUA. I attended the Friday reorg, and I have a couple issues regarding this authority. I attended the Friday reorg, and I asked a question during the public session of the board president, and was pretty much stonewalled with the answer. I wasn't given an answer. It was a reorg session where there were a lot of attendees, a couple family members and such, so I didn't press it. But I think we should the public should, if they ask direct, answerable questions, should expect a full response to the best ability of the board. And I didn't get that Friday, and it's not the first time I didn't get an answer. I got an answer similar to that. There seemed to be some reluctance to give open answers at the public sessions of that authority. Any comments on that?
I don't think we're reluctant to give answers, Pete. I think the question you asked, the chairman stated that it's at the will of the council to appoint their members. So, I think that's really all he knew at that time.
Okay. It's not the first time I've gotten an answer that I felt was that way. I felt was kind of unresponsive like that, but just to let this body know that I'm going to press it harder in the future if I get responses like that, and not walk away with a non-response. And regarding the MUA, which board members would have had their terms expired?
There's one, Pete, and that's Amy Tarvis. Her term, if you will, expired at the end of January 31st.
And no council or the mayor, who's in charge of this council?
Council, correct me if I'm wrong, council has the appointment of the MUA.
And I'm curious how that wasn't filled.
Explained at the last, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
At the last meeting, there was a question regarding it, and the individual, if there's no one reappointed or there's not a new appointment, can still maintain that seat as a holdover. Correct if I'm wrong, David?
Correct, that's by statute. The individual stays, the term expires, the individual remains in the seat until a qualified successor has been named and appointed.
Right. So that explains more why the holdover. I'm wondering the appointment process. Do you wait for applications? Do you seek people? Do you interview people? I mean, how is it that it wasn't able to be filled this time around?
There's times where we'll get people who tell us they're interested. In this case, we just did not do the appointment. I explained it at the workshop, and at the workshop, I've asked the solicitor to work with their solicitor to answer a few questions before the council talks about reappointing or appointing anyone.
Did Ms. Tarvis express her interest to remain in that position?
Yes, she did.
Okay.
Yes, she did.
But you didn't feel...
At this time,
No,
the
right.
council decided not to pursue that.
Okay. Third issue with the MUA is more specific. It's about a consulting contract that was awarded to Strategic Data Management, which is, from here on out, I'll just refer to it as Ben Zangi. That's who it is. He was given a IT consulting contract in 2013. It lasted 6 months. He was paid $127,000. Didn't seem to accomplish the objectives of his engagement. His engagement was stopped, I think, before it was successfully completed. In my opinion, from the very beginning, the RFQ was geared toward him accepting it. He didn't even have experience in this particular software, the Edmunds software. He has IT experience, I assume. Don't know the man. Didn't do a successful job in this engagement, but that does not, according to the response he submitted, does not even have experience in the software itself, which, when you're leaving a contract wide open like that to bring someone in, should be one of the criteria. And we all know it's common knowledge he's a friend of the party in charge of this township. He's a school board member. He's, lack of a better word, he's in the inner circle. Does this seem inappropriate at all, this whole contract, this whole RFQ, this whole engagement, his work that was done, the completion of the work, the awarding of the contract, does it seem inappropriate to anyone?
Well, Pete, just to set some of the record straight, there was items that needed to be taken care of in the MUA, and they were of software and financial needs there. They had to get the software up and running. They had to connect it to different other softwares, through, talking back and forth to each other. They established different types of programs. One that could be paid online. Two, it did not need to have every check written down in a log. So there's a lot of things it did accomplish. The payroll system was added to the Edmunds, so it flowed into the Edmunds system. So there was a lot of productivity that was created out of this contract, and a lot of that got accomplished. So there was a lot that needed to be done. There was a lot that got done, and so they have a better system. They have a more productive system. They're utilizing the Edmunds system. They got in front of all the particulars of loading and getting the proper numbers into the system and changing what they've done manually to a automated process. So they did accomplish a lot.
I think if I may, in addition to that, as I spoke with their attorney, it was determined that they did follow the procurement statute. They have to follow the procurement statute in New Jersey just as municipal government does. They went out for their RFQ. It was publicly advertised. I believe that this company was the only responding company. So as far as the procurement statutes of how the individual will sought and receive the appointment, they follow the laws in the state of New Jersey.
Yeah, I believe that. I believe they technically followed the procedure.
And may I just ask, just going to see one thing, please, no extra time.
Yes.
The MUA, I've said this before, the MUA is a separate government or quasi-governmental. Is it quasi-governmental?
Yeah, it's governmental entity. It's autonomous. Once the appointment is made and the establishment of an MUA, that's their charge. The control council has to make the appointments.
So, as a governing body, all that we can do at this juncture is to decide who gets to be a commissioner.
Council makes the appointment, correct?
Now, if something happens, and I'm not suggesting that something has happened improper, okay, because quite frankly, I have no idea. But if something happened that was improper, what is our responsibility at this juncture? What would we do?
Well, it's kind of a broad question. So, I mean, just under the general statutory powers of the governing body, you're the body that created the MUA, not this particular government. It's been around for a while. And you are the authority that makes the appointment. As the individual or governing body that created the municipal utilities authority, you have jurisdiction to make inquiries, to ask for answers or reports, and that's one of the things I believe the council president directed at the last meeting when it was explained why the individual was not up for recommended for reappointment. Wanted me to reach out to the solicitor for the utility authority just to explore some issues. You have a right to do that.
Related to that, there was a period during Mr. Zangi's engagement, 9 consecutive weeks, where Mr. Zangi billed 60 hours per week. After that 9-week period, it went down to 38 to 40 to 42 hours per week. There was a 9-week straight period near the beginning of this engagement where he billed 60 hours each and every week. At least 2 of those weeks were 4-day work weeks, like election day was a non-working day and Columbus Day or something like that. At least 2 of those 9 weeks were 4-day work weeks. And every one of the timesheets or the billings that were submitted by Mr. Zangi with the hours on them and what he worked on, a couple of them had a list of activities and just had a lump 60 hours worked, period. Whereas the rest of the timesheets, he did itemized day by day, what he worked on and how many hours. But the first few, probably before he was reprimanded, I don't know, had 60 hours, 1 line item, X things worked on, bill $7,500. That was the first couple bills. After that, there was a period of more weeks, like 6 or 7 consecutive weeks after that, where he indicated what he worked each day, 7.5 hours, 6.5, 8.5, 9.5, and added up to 40 or such. Then he threw 1 extra line item on every bill that said 20 hours or 26 hours or whatever it took to get to the 60, and had a list of items he worked on. But 9 consecutive weeks where he submitted a timesheet and a bill for 60 hours every week, 4-day work week or not, or whether he could tell you how much hours he worked each day or not. Well, he never really did that. 60 hours times $125 per hour, $7,500 flat bill, 9 consecutive weeks. So just adds to the suspicion that the whole thing seemed inappropriate from the beginning. The fact that maybe there was some limited success of his work. The whole Edmonds project didn't run smoothly or successfully or on budget or on time. So the whole thing just, the more you look into the details, there seems to be a lot of items of inappropriateness, and right from the beginning. Big picture, how the contract was worded, and little details, his billings and his hours that he charged. A lot of things didn't look appropriate, and I think should be looked into a little more than it has so far.
That's what we asked the solicitor to do.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Right?
Good evening again, Council Ray Powell, Ariel. Start with a question and end up with a compliment on this regarding the public works. The past few weekends we were forecast to have storms pretty much on Sunday. Just my question on, I guess, the past 3 weekends it seemed like we were looking at storms. What days was it that the public works had run the brine through the township? Was it the day before, 2 days before?
I don't recall the specific days that we ran brine through. We're talking about within the past week, last weekend, this past weekend.
Well, basically the past 3 weekends, it was forecast that we were going to see something, and I think they're afraid to even call it right now after they blew the big one. But
our procedure, Ray, is if we believe there is the threat of snow or icy conditions, we will assign 2 trucks. There will be a driver in each vehicle. Those vehicles are loaded with brine, and they'll begin on each end of the town, and they will go through all the main roadways first, and then they will hit all the developments afterwards. Typically, that is anywhere from 4 to 8 hours. I believe in the past couple instances, it's been for 4 hours for each truck. And that brine is good and stays down until such time as we get some rain or snow.
and I'm not criticizing the per chance based on the forecast, because I certainly can't blame you for what they saw coming almost a week out. My question is more refined to Friday, Saturday, Sunday brining. In that, are you aware whether it was just Saturday? Was it Friday, Saturday, leading up to Sunday for the past few
I
weeks?
don't recall. There was a Saturday brining. There also was a Sunday brining, but again, that I can appreciate that that would be a time and a half, or that would be a double time, but then again, that's based on the threat of inclement weather.
Okay. And as I said, I would follow up with a compliment. Plows come down in Clementona, where I live in Ariel. It's probably the first time since I've been here that I've seen a brine truck come down, so compliment. And each and every street, including, which is very inconvenient for the drivers, because most of the streets dead end into the wood area behind Timber Creek, and it is extremely difficult because they literally either have to back down to lay the brine or back out to get out. So it was a task, and I compliment the Public Works for that. It was a heck of a job they did.
Again, they are doing a very good job, and we've been lucky so far.
Yes. Yeah. Just a brief follow-up on Mr. Heimball's questions regarding Mr. Zangi's company that was doing the work for Public Works. It would be my guess that Public Works will not be entertaining Mr. Zangi's services in the future.
Public Works, or you mean MUA?
I'm sorry. Thank you. MUA.
Yeah, at this time, I don't believe so, but I can't really tell you that. I don't know.
Okay. Would it be not the understanding of council that Mr. Zangi's service, his business is no longer in business?
That I don't know. Right. I don't know.
Okay. I mean, basically through open an Oprah and public information that I procured from the police department with Mr. Zangi's information on it, he listed his place of employment as the Kiwanis Blackwood Kiwanis Little League. So it would lead me to believe that that corporation of his or LLC is no longer in business. So maybe when we're looking at requiring those type of services, then we could look somewhere else. Thank you, and be safe going home.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Thompson, 300 Drexel Avenue. I had came to council in 2014 about the problem of infestation in my neighborhood of feeding rodents, and the council was saying that they were supposed to write a new ordinance, that I had to give them time. In October there was one workshop being done. November I had attended the open public nights of the meetings in November, but I didn't speak on that. But I did submit more pictures to council with that. December I was away for Christmas vacation, and in January the 5th it went through mediation with the neighbor, and it was supposed to be resoluted with mediation. However, the mediation contract was broken. So now, because we're not feeding them where we can see and hiding them behind our house, it is also, now we are housing them. Getting pillows that they're digging cotton, and it's all over the entire neighborhood. Squirrels taking cotton has done damage, nesting in underneath of my shed, which I have pictures. I signed a complaint today to go in front of the judge, and it's being done on January the 24th. It's being heard here again. Now, I would like to ask council again, how long before we write a new ordinance? Because it's been over 20-some weeks.
I can respond to that. Council recalls, I believe, the issues specifically with bird feeding and feeding wildlife. And I believe you submitted some documentation from other towns or cities and states. I know I've reviewed several documents from other states, Minnesota comes to mind, in an attempt to come up with some ordinance that can effectively limit someone's ability to put out bird feeders or to feed wildlife, and it's extremely difficult. I think the enforcement would be very difficult. And I indicated to you when you were here from your pictures, I felt very strongly that it was a Board of Health issue. If the excessive bird feeding, putting out bird feed, attracting birds was also attracting rodents, created an issue for the Board of Health. I don't believe there was a code violation that could be determined, so it was more of a Board of Health issue than the township trying to regulate someone putting out bird feeders. And I know the pictures you showed were excessive. That's why I felt very strongly it was a Board of Health issue. I know you've been in municipal court, and apparently you had a mediation, which is probably directed by the municipal court judge. If you didn't follow the mediation, you should be brought back into court. You tell me you have another charge. As far as adopting an ordinance, it's not that simple just to say you can't feed birds. There has to be some ability when a code enforcement officer goes out there that it's clear. It's just not lend itself to discrimination, arbitrary, capricious type decisions. And I have not been able to submit anything to the governing body that I believe will pass muster constitutional issues that the ordinance can be adopted.
Okay. On November, when I spoke with council before, I had also with them pictures sent a copy and gave, sorry, I don't know her name's, Roe. I gave Roe a copy of the Oprah report that was for attracting rodents, and it was sent in by the Board of Health. And that's why, so I would like council to go back and review them records again, because there was he got written up twice.
You might have by the Board of Health, the County Board of Health, and there might be I believe there definitely is a County Board of Health issue.
And it said
than an ordinance prohibiting a property owner or resident from feeding birds.
And also with that, that was presented that night with a petition of 80 signatures in the neighborhood about attracting rodents and wildlife, and especially them big, disgusting turkey buzzards that we have all over the neighborhood now because they decided to knock down the woods to build the new mall. So Blackwood Estates is getting hit. So with that, I'm going to give them more times, and I also wanted to say that I did inform David Mayor's office today about this situation, and I have more pictures of the thing that is going on now with the January the 24th that I would like to submit to council again, to where it is housing of the 307, Mr. Nick Turn's property, plus the vacant house of 301, which the cotton is all over the yard, blowing into my yard, which did damage to my shed underneath where they are nesting, okay, and took the cotton. There we go. So it's all there. So I would like to submit that, and hopefully that council won't look away from this, because I feel that it's just not in my neighborhood. He's not the only one that has this problem. And on that petition it did state in that petition, excluded to bird feeders. I don't care if people have bird feeders in their yard. I am talking about open containers. When you see an open container, okay, and we're talking a container that you would use to put summer clothes in, or winter clothes, or for storage, or whatever, and you turn around and you're going to tell me that the size of an ice chest with a storage container and the hole that a squirrel can fit into and go in there and feed and come out of, that's not housing?
I think that's a Board of Health issue, because what the purpose of that is to attract rodents.
Exactly. So there he is, he's ruining all of our property because there's no ordinance. Well, I'll tell you, I'm sorry not to defend or not to disrespect council, but I am giving this 2 more months. If nothing's done and I don't get satisfied in court, then I'm going to the news media, because I have had it.
Well, I understand council has not been given anything by my office to review, because quite frank with you.
What about all them papers I turned in?
I understand the documents that you turned in, but I have to look at it as legislation. I have to look at it as an enabling law by the township, which is the ordinance, and I have to look at it as something that they're going to pass that's going to be held up if it's challenged in court. And I can't come up with something that will say you cannot put out bird feeders or certain. I really look at it as a Board of Health.
I'm not talking about a bird feeder. I'm talking about containers of open food. That is what I'm talking about. I don't care if it's got bird feed in it. I don't care if it's got hot dogs in the container and the squirrel's eating it. It's that.
I understand. I'll review something and try to get something to the governing body. I'll do the best I can to get it to the governing body. But in fairness to them, they have not received anything from me to review.
Okay, well, this is where it's at now. So I don't know what else to do.
Submit those pictures. I'd like to review them.
I will. This is 300. This is 301. And this is 307. Go on.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. Anyone else? Pete?
Pete Heindall, Morningstar Court. Just the last topic I spoke on, I thought of a couple follow-ups, just real quick questions. This inquiry to the MUA's solicitor, what triggered that inquiry or that request for investigation or research? What is it that triggered?
I had concern with some of the procedures there, so I asked the solicitor to work with their solicitor and make sure things are going appropriately.
That request was from you as you reviewed the billings or the
I have not, but I've asked our solicitor to work with the solicitor and the chairman of the MUA to review it and come back and give me his opinion. And obviously we've had an opinion for council, his opinion for council.
Is it the scope of what you're asking the solicitor to do just Mr. Zangi's work? On Mr. Zangi's engagement only, or is it broader than
on
that?
everything? You know, take a look at every process that's going on, and then inform us on what's happening.
I hope that's a worthy investigation. I mean, this engagement with Mr. Zangi, I just stumbled across on a bill list and brought it up here. I mean, who knows what, if it's left for residents to stumble on, or you to stumble on something you don't see, and I mean, it doesn't look right, or me to stumble on something that doesn't look right. It needs to be a thorough investigation, so I hope it's done. Thank you.
Thank you, Pete. Anyone else? Seeing no other hands, we close the second public portion. Polling of directors and council, please.
Mr. Lechner.
I have nothing to report.
Chief Earl.
Nothing to report, thank you.
Carl Wiener.
Nothing to report.
Mr. Campbell.
Nothing to report.
Mr. Cordis.
Nothing to report.
Mr. Hutchison.
Thank you very much for coming this evening, and hopefully we'll get to the bottom of our inquiry.
Mr. Schmidt.
Thank you for coming out this evening, and thank you for all your comments.
Mr. Siler.
I have nothing to report.
Mrs. Strada.
Thank you for coming out. Have a good week.
Mrs. Winters.
Thank you for your comments and dressing.
Mr. Mercado.
I wasn't here at our last meeting, so I didn't have an opportunity to thank our community for supporting our Martin Luther King Day of Service. We had over 450 individuals that participated in 19 projects throughout the township. So I'd like to thank Gloucester Township Public Schools, Township of Gloucester for participating and supporting the event, and most importantly our residents. Thank you for coming out and have a good evening.
Mr. King.
Thank you to all our residents for attending tonight's meeting. I quickly want to congratulate all the fire districts who have reorganized or reinstalled or installed new officers, etc. They've been holding their installation dinners throughout this past month, and I'd like to congratulate and thank them for all of their service that they provide our township. Also, congratulations to Mrs. Morley for her service to our Historic and Scenic Preservation Committee. With that, I wish everyone a great night and ask for a motion to adjourn. All those in favor? I'm sorry? Michelle?
Okay.
All those opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you.
Well, slow, see?
Hey, John. How you doing?